Welcome to what I think is the sixth seminar in this series, Design Matters, which is part of our cost action, Multi-Disciplinary Innovation for Social Change. Hi, Justine. Hello, everybody. I'm not sure if we've got anybody new this month, but if you are new, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. Just that you know, I am recording this and I will be posting it up on YouTube on the series channel. The link will be posted in the chat for this afterwards. We've got two speakers today, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to keep my welcome fairly brief. We've got Yilmaz and Lauren speaking to us this morning. Yilmaz is an independent filmmaker. He'll do a much better introduction of himself and his work in a moment. And Lauren works within the charitable sector in the UK and is head innovator of a housing charity called Citizen. And again, no doubt she will do a much better introduction to herself than me. So my boys have been giving me tips on YouTube videos and the sorts of things that I should be saying. And I should be setting challenges for the amount of likes that we get within a week. So apparently, according to my two boys, if we get 20 likes in this week, I will do a funny video to complement this series. No promises. Right, let's get straight to it. So Yilmaz is going to start us off this morning, 30 minutes or so, sharing some of the work that he's done around open heritage and some of the documentaries he's created. We'll have a few minutes for some questions. If you think of any questions while Yilmaz is talking, please post them in the chat and I'll host the Q&A afterwards. And then we'll segue into Lauren and close out the session with a few questions and comments towards the end. So, Yilmaz, you have control.
Thank you. All right. So I'll just briefly introduce myself first. Hi, I am Yilmaz Vurucu, a storyteller, filmmaker, and basically I view storytelling as one of the oldest, let's say, ways of passing on information and knowledge from generation to generation, and also compiling our heritage and our information as a species. The stories that I generally deal with have to do with disenfranchised people, socially, economically disadvantaged segments of societies, etc. But I also ask questions of the situation of humanity, the systems that we're dealing with, what's going wrong, what's wrong with them, how we can improve them, etc. I was born and raised in Canada, and being a child of the 80s, individualism was really pumped into us. You know, we believe that you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you can do whatever you want and you can accomplish things. And so for me, the concept of community was really just those fringe hipsters out there trying to do something among themselves, which you really didn't understand. They didn't have a sense of reality. They had no touch with the systems that we exist in. And if you wanted to be successful, community, perhaps family, perhaps relatives was your community, but you really had to individualistically strive to do something. So once I came into Europe, I came across different community initiatives, and my view of them was the same. I thought to myself, they're just hipsters trying to do something. But the digger I delved into it, I realized that these communities have to create change within existing structures. They have to find innovative ways of surviving economically, socially, culturally within already existing structures and thrive while also meeting the needs of their communities, as well as connecting the communities to municipalities or to legal frameworks or to policies. So I realized pretty soon that this was much more than a bunch of hipsters coming together to do something. They had to have a concept, they had to combine their knowledge, and they had to find unique ways of expressing themselves. And in the case of open heritage, they had to find unique ways of restructuring and finding reuse for buildings that were no longer used. And so that's what the Open Heritage Project is. And basically what I did is I traveled. So there are case studies in the Open Heritage Project where they go through different heritage sites and the reuse of them by communities. And I traveled to different communities throughout Europe, and I documented them in the form of short films. But let me just, before I do that, I do have a structure here. I'm going to try to keep with the structure. I'll share my screen with you. Here we go. So, PowerPoint. God bless it. How does this look okay? Should I go full screen? I guess that's fine. Yeah. So, what is the Open Heritage Project? It tests and identifies and tests best practices of adaptive heritage reuse in Europe. Most of these buildings are buildings with history. They're protected, most of them, with heritage laws, so it's not so easy to find use for them. And the project, by studying these, creates case studies. It creates policies and tools to promote the reuse and repurposing of heritage buildings. So what I did is I created a series of short documentaries while traveling to these locations, and I told their stories through interviews by spending some time on the ground with the communities there. And basically, I ended up creating short films, and now a feature film is in the works in this regard, and we're working on feature film. Hopefully, if this Corona thing goes by and I can travel again, I want to spend more time with the communities and gather more of their stories. So I did quite a few of these short documentaries, but today I'm going to present 3 case studies that kind of moved me the most. And we will start with the first one, which is the Stara Trnica. Well, it's Slovakian, not so easy to pronounce, but it is an old market hall. Look at this building. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It was created even before the era of communism, during the monarchy times. And it is a building that connects the old city to the new city. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to play the 2 minutes of the film here. And then after that, I can present what is innovative about the model that they created and what they did. So window, I don't know. Let's just play it.
Ez a pozsonyi vásárcsarnok, ami 1910-ben épült.
I see it as the heart of the city.
It's one of the most important cultural venues in the city of Bratislava. 8 évig zárva volt a csarnok épülete, és végül az a 11 ember, aki megalapította ezt a Vásárcsarnok Szövetséget. Voltak azok, akik egy ponton elértünk kb. Ugyanabban az időben arra a motivációra, hogy jó, van itt egy csarnoképület, és próbáljuk meg választ adni arra, hogy ezt hogy lehet újjáépíteni, újjáéleszteni.
We said you cannot just do it all at once. Basically, it has to grow organically. And since the idea was that this market hall would function as a cultural center and as a market hall, we felt that it was good to start with a monthly market first to try out the space.
All right, so that is just the first 2 minutes of the documentary. You can view it online as well if you're interested in seeing more. But I just wanted to kind of introduce you to the setting, to the beautiful market. You see, it's big, it's elaborate, it's huge. And the story behind it is that, like I said, it was a historical building. The municipality sought new uses for it, especially during the 90s, but it was unable to maintain the revenue and operate it as a market hall. So the old Market Hall Alliance, which was just an alliance of experts, NGOs, people interested in reviving the market and holding on to its heritage, came together, connected it with the community in the vicinity, wanted to make sure that it kept on to its heritage with the market, so they had to ensure that the market continued to survive. But to do that, they had to find innovative ways of making this market survive. So they came up with a plan, which basically, and we can talk about that in the activities here, which basically combined the use of the market. So Saturdays are reserved for market use. And during the week, the same market is utilized as a concert hall, a ballroom. It's rented out to companies as a conference hall or a workspace, etc. And the other spaces within the market, especially the spaces looking out into the streets, there is restaurants, cafes, there's a bike sharing shop, a wine producer, a local brewery, etc. And these are the permanent tenants that also pay rent. And so all of what happens is that this way they were able to ensure that there was financial stability, and this huge building, while you could upkeep it and ensure that you renovated it and you were able to keep up with all the renovations, um, it also functioned as a market hall and continued to pass on and preserve this heritage. Um, so the economic model, this I also found very unique in terms of innovation. The economic model is a rent to invest scheme. So what it is the alliance pays a symbolic €1 a rent per year to the municipality, but it invests €10,000 a month in the renovation of the market hall for the entire duration of the contract. That's €120,000 a year. So basically, the revenue goes into paying for this and ensuring that the location serves a social function and a community function, mainly the market. And so the revenues come from the rental fees, the large events, and the marketing cooperations. So basically, the story of this, if I am to summarize, is that there was an old building in the middle of town with a history and a heritage, and a group of people came together and found a way to connect it back with the community and back with its old function, and make it feasible to the municipality so that they rented it out for them. And that is the innovation that I'm taking out from this. And it's quite a unique initiative, let's say. Now, the second one is a place called Largo Residencias. This one is in Lisbon, in Portugal. And this one is really unique. I'll just briefly go over the history here. You can see it. Now, it's a story that proves that success doesn't always pay, and I'll get into why that is in a moment. But it was, to just summarize, it was built as a ceramic factory, and at one point it was even used as a brothel. And because it was used as a brothel, the municipality took over the building, and then a new owner purchased it, but the new owner couldn't find ways of renovating it or finance it rather. So a group of culture workers came in and said, hey, we want to revitalize this area, this district. And they started making use of the building, and they signed a contract, and they renovated the building, and they put it to good use. Now, I want to play the video for this. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Once again, quickly, just 2 minutes of it because of time limitations, and you can view more of this online. I will provide you with the links afterwards, but here we go.
Actually, we chose that name because Largo, it's this square, Largo do Intendente. And Intendente was a known place. It was one of the most decorated spaces and neighborhoods of the city center of Lisbon, where nobody wanted to step in.
I remember coming here quite well. I think there was a cardboard here, and I also remember, I think it was in this room, a calendar with the Pope, with John Paul II, but it was mostly a pension for prostitution. I think there was a tension in between the landlords that want to evict them. We came in for the first time after the court give back the keys to the landlord. We didn't understood from the beginning what it was, but that's how we started to work on with this building.
So first of all, we had to take some time not to do anything, but mostly to be a part of the place and to be sitting on a bench, to know, to talk, to get familiar. Largo Residencias has been working on a community level since its beginning.
All right, so let me see if I can. Okay, you see me. Good. So basically, Marta Silva was the lady speaking there. She's one of the founders. She's a dancer and a culture worker. And she says that actually when I first came here, the sexual workers or sex workers in the area thought that I was the new madame. So it's a place with a very interesting history. And this, let me set the scene for you. I mean, Intendente, this part of Lisbon was really quite run down. It was a problematic area with a lot of drugs and other problematic issues going on. And so what Largo Residencias had to do is they created a building. They found a purpose and use for the building as a cultural and a commercial cooperative. And while doing that, they also reached out into the community, brought the community together through different programs and through culture working, etc., and through festivals and connecting the community. They ended up reviving the Intendente neighborhood to the point where now Intendente is known as being the place for culture in Lisbon. And as a result of that, when I was there, I saw hotels pop up throughout the whole neighborhood. And unfortunately, Largo Residencia's contract has not been extended by the landlord, because he can get better rent from hotels. So apparently that building is also now going to be converted into a hotel. So that is quite a story showing that how you could revitalize a neighborhood. It results in gentrification and pushes out the people who revitalized it themselves. Now, I just want to share with you the activities of Largo. So here we go. There we go. Oops. There we go. Yeah. So basically, what they did is they created a multi-purpose space that combines social, cultural, and commercial functions in one. So it had artists in residencies. It operated as a hostel with private rooms for short-term rentals for tourists. So you could actually go online and book a hostel when you're staying in Lisbon. And it had a cafe as a meeting point for locals. So the cafe was very interesting because you could actually sit there for hours on end and not be forced to not have to buy anything. In fact, if you were hungry and you didn't even have money, you could also get food from the cafe. So it served as this meeting point for all the locals. And also as a studio and venue for artists, because the establishers and the founders were artists themselves, and through their art and through festivals, they tried to connect through cultural programs the people in the region. So basically what ended up happening is it revitalized the neighborhood and it connected the initiatives through cooperation. The economic model, well, it was the commercial revenues from the hotel and the hostel that supported the cultural and artistic projects and covered the wages of the workers. So basically what that meant is that the hostel and the income from the hostel helped pay for the activity, that the artistic and cultural activities, as well as the festivals that they were putting on. The cafe functioned as a social cafe, as I said, and did not generate revenue. And the main expense obviously was the 6,000 euros a month paid to the building owner. And now, after 10 years, the lease has expired, and unfortunately, we heard that the owner has not renewed the lease, so they're looking for a new venue now to continue on with their activities, and they want to stay in the same neighborhood to do that. So the innovation in this, for me, was the revitalization of a whole neighborhood. And there's policy aspects, which I'm not getting into as well, but they were working close with the municipality and creating new policies and legislation to ensure that such models continued to pop up and were supported. So that is the story of Largo. Now, I'd also like to tell the story of Sark Fabric, which is, this is the third and final one. Sark Fabric is in Vienna. It's in the Penzing district. And it used to be an old coffin factory. However, after World War II, unfortunately, coffins were no longer in high demand. So a new use was found for it. And I'll just play the video of this one as well. And then I can briefly describe what happened, the story of the Sark Fabric. So here we go.
There are many associations that were founded at that time with an idea of a better future. And the Sark Fabric is also one.
Ich bin gehöre zur Gründergeneration. Die Geschichte, warum ich dabei bin, war ursprünglich, dass wir in den 80er Jahren eine Tochter bekamen und wir aus der Stadt gezogen sind, weil es einfach zu heiß, zu eng war. Wir wollten sehr gerne mit anderen Menschen, die also gleichgesinnt sind, zusammenziehen.
When we started to plan, I lived in the 7th district. This is a very young district. There are a lot of students there, and Sark Fabric is a little bit outside. Then they started to build the metro line, and then I applied for the membership here. And in the first round, our members told me they don't like to have two architects as a member.
It was common in Vienna that you had factories like that. You had the house in front where the family that had the enterprise lived, and sometimes also the workers, and in the backyard they had the factory. And here they produced coffins.
After World War I and World War II, they got bankrupt because they could not sell so much coffin anymore. So it looks like a very old-fashioned building because it's out of bricks. We were part of this planning process together with all the other peoples of the cooperative. We developed this kind of new housing, social housing project. In between, I think it was 7 years for the first part.
Okay, let's see if I can figure this out. There we go. Oh, come on. Okay. So, all right. So the Sark Fabric is very interesting. Obviously, it has an interesting story. All of these initiatives have an interesting story. This used to be a coffin factory, and there wasn't a need for coffins anymore after World War II, so it went bankrupt, and it was taken over by a group of people who wanted to create a new future. We're talking about the late 70s, early 80s. A generation who was conscious ecologically, who were tired of city life. They wanted to move to the periphery of the city and find a community, the hipsters that I was talking about. But this group of hipsters, they consisted of like middle-class families that kind of knew how to create a system and knew how to exactly what they wanted, and they went out and they got it. So, but the thing is, the project took 10 years to complete in total because it was no easy task convincing the municipality, getting the funding. It's a mega project. Like, we're talking about renovating and redoing a whole factory to turn into housing and a community center. So basically, from the beginning, their goals were explicit social goals, focusing on integration, social equality, and diversity. And it was created before collaborative housing was even a thing. So later on, the Sark Fabric became a model project, and it receives visitors from throughout Europe to kind of study the model and how it was put together and done. It has a public bath, a kindergarten, a cafe, an event room, a concert hall, a cultural center. So it's basically an all-in-one thing which has revitalized the whole area of Penzing. And in the beginning, the whole district, the Penzing district, was considered, as they said in the video, was considered outside of Vienna on the periphery. And Sark Fabric, I can say, kind of that neighborhood, has been influential in putting it on the map as a high-in-demand area now, to the point where if you see like newspaper advertisements, you'll see, this building is located next to the Sarg Fabric. It'll say it there because there's cultural institutions there that the locals are allowed access to and that they use. They're allowed to use the kindergarten. They're allowed to go and use the public bath, etc. So one of the interesting things for me was the Kulturhaus, the cultural program. So they started a cultural program that housed or that hosted, let's say, that actually for the first time brought world music to Vienna and folk traditions from around the world, from the most diverse cultures in the world. And there are musicians who actually became famous afterwards after performing at the Kulturhaus there. We're talking about a hall, a music hall, a concert hall with about a capacity of 300, but it became extremely influential in the music scene, which is also interesting. in terms of the architecture, they had to be courageous, and what they did is they developed the architecture. First of all, they held on to the chimney that you saw. That iconic chimney is still there. Even though the upkeep cost of that is quite expensive, they still hold on to it. And they had to create settings for use by everyone. So the tenants were involved directly in the process of design. So the tenant said, I need a house with these purposes, or I need a flat this big or this small. And the architects co-designed the space with the tenants, with their involvement. So they were talking about, meetings that lasted until early hours in the morning and took forever, etc. And over 10 years, imagine, that's quite the process. So what does it offer though right now? Let me share my screen here again. All right. So basically it offers affordable rental prices, right? So the prices of rent is going up in Vienna to extremely high levels, and the Sark Fabric still offers housing at affordable rates. The income coming in from the housing supports a social fund that integrates people of different income levels. So even if you can't afford to live in the Sark Fabric housing complex, you can apply to get funding to assist in living there. 15% of the housing units are reserved for the elderly or disabled or displaced people. And there's the cafe there, which is very nice. And people with disabilities can work at the cafe. And so as a result of all of this, the community, I forgot to mention, it's very democratic. The process is very democratic. The community selects the tenants themselves. And so the community wants to get to know the people who are moving in. And they also house refugees, elderly, etc., and make sure that the community is extremely diverse. And as I said, it put Penzing on the map. And for me, I mean, the thing is this. I'm stopping the sharing options here. Yeah, the thing is the Sarg Fabric ended up being a kind of iconic place. But the question is, was it also a result of the zeitgeist of the times? Because in the 80s, the city of Vienna was open to social housing. It funded these schemes. And is it possible currently to do that? We don't really know. There are a few initiatives, but no one has quite obtained the success of the Sarg Fabric. So that's still a question and debate. So those are the three most kind of influential for me and impressive projects among the projects that I covered. And as I said, hopefully these will all go into creating a feature documentary, which you can continue to be updated on if you go to my website, which I can also link. And yeah, that's that. That's my presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's fascinating, and I'm sure we'll all look forward to the full documentary. Yeah, if you can supply some of the links, I certainly would like to watch the full length version of those short films. So that was really interesting. Peter, I think had a question. Peter.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. You're so enthusiastic. So it was amazing to listen to you for like 30 minutes in a row. And I also really like those examples. And I kept me thinking. I also lived in London for a while, really close to Battersea Power Plant power station. And they also did something like the Sark Fabric, but they just invested like $1 billion and they sold the housing, and now it's a really posh place. So it's a complete. So the two ways of looking at those old artifacts or old cultural heritage things. But I had one question. You touched upon it with the third example, because I can see the business models behind it. Once it gets going, you get income in. But how do you start? I mean, so with the third example you told as well, it took them 10 years to get funding. But for example, the second one, what did they do? Did they go to a bank for a loan with a business plan, or did they get funding from the? So was it? Yeah, Joe. How did it go? Do you have any?
Largo Residencias, you mean the one in Lisbon?
Yeah, the first one as well. But...
So there was a few initiatives that it was linked up to. There was the BIP-ZIP program in Lisbon, which is a program that funds neighborhoods and the revitalization of neighborhoods. So there's a financial scheme behind it that supported this, that provided an initial income. Also, what I didn't mention is that, because we didn't have time, there's a board, and it's a democratic process. It's an association. And some people invest money, other people invest with their time. So the people, like the architects involved in the renovation, did it out of their own free time. The people involved in the construction contributed towards the success of the project through their own donated time and efforts. So there was a lot of that going on as well. So there's a mixture of different sources, and I think that's one of the innovations. I mean, like you said, in the case of the huge project that you were talking about, if it's done for profit, they put in $1 billion, they redo it, and then they sell it at a high margin, at a high cost. But if it's a community initiative, people get involved through donations. You find municipal funding, you find EU funding or other sources of funds. You involve people through donation and working schemes, etc. And that's what Largo Residencias did. I will link the case studies. There's like 70 pages written up on these things. So if you're interested and you want to delve more into it, I'll link the case studies as well. So you can.
So you really need people who get going, basically, who keep up going forever until they have the funding. So it's really a process of longer term.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, it's a community-based thing, and it's a process over time. You know what this helps do is it helps ground it, I think, because then these projects they attain success as a result of this. But at the same time, it has difficulties because it's not a top-bottom approach; it's a bottom-up approach. And as you can all very well imagine, when you try to do something from bottom up, it takes so much more effort and funding, and it's not so easy. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was interesting. There were all three examples were really interesting. The question that I had was about the second one, the Largo, and the 10-year tenancy not being continued by the landowner. Did you get a sense, or were you able to speak to the people who were running the initiative about how that sat with them? Did they think, do you know what, we've done our job here in this community, we've helped transform it, and we're ready to move to a different area, or actually was there some tension and resentment around the fact that they weren't able to continue?
Well, they were not happy with it, obviously, because they invested so much time. And the part of the thing is they did the project step by step. That was another thing. So they did one floor, and then they started renting out the hostel, and with the income coming from that, Peter, this also answers your question in a way. They continued building up, So they invested so much, and they're not getting what they're investing out of it, obviously. So yeah, there is some resentment there. They also helped revive the neighborhood, and they played a huge role in connecting different neighborhood initiatives. So they spoke to the municipality. They tried to create legislation and pass on new frameworks for this. But I think this is proving to be a case which the municipality can look into and enact new laws and legislations to help support such initiatives. So maybe, there was a case in Berlin where they signed a 100-year lease, the Rotaprint, ex-Rotaprint factory in Berlin, they signed a 100-year lease. So maybe Largo would have been better served if they did something like that in hindsight.
Yeah. I mean,
they want to stay in the same neighborhood now.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about the sustainability of these initiatives. So, obviously it takes a long time to have the scale of change in the cases that you've reported on. And it's just interesting to think about, well, actually, are there policies that have been developed as a consequence of this that kind of scale or create some sustainability around this? Carmen, I think, has a question. Carmen.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm from Romania. Very interesting examples and diverse as well, and a good source of inspiration for my country. As for example, I was wondering if if these countries are encouraging this type of organizations to report on the social impact they obtain in their community, and if this kind of reporting is rewarded. So if there is a preferential treatment from the local public administration, for example, for these types of initiatives, for the purpose of multiplication in that community. So if if there is a legislation in place which encourages this type of community involvement, and the effort is rewarded as well.
Yeah, the thing is, it differs from country to country because, local, it even differs from municipality to municipality, And in some cases, these organizations, they have to work with the municipality to convince them of the viability of the project. Like in the case of Stara Turnitska, for instance, they really had to come up with a plan, a 70-page proposal. I believe it was 70 pages, so I might be wrong. But they had to come up with letters from event organizers saying, yes, they want to rent out this place during the week. So they really had to prove that it was going to be viable. And they even had to encourage, because normally for a project of this scale, the municipality would have to put out a call. And there is also a law in there, a clause in there that says that it could be handed over to an organization if they give a proposal that's that's strong enough to not merit a call. So, in terms of reporting back, I believe that's what the Open Heritage Project is doing, and the EU is really funding these kind of research projects to ensure that these cases are documented and to ensure that a more European-wide legal framework and policy framework can be created. So that's where they're stepping in. And then on the local level, most of these organizations, once they are up and running, they become very involved in the local arena, let's say, and they become involved in creating policies and in creating legislation or in helping or becoming experts in the field in advising the creation, etc. So I would have to say that, once again, that depends on the municipality, it depends on the country, and that's part of one of the problems that Largo had in regards to the local laws and local legislation, whereas the case in Berlin, which I didn't present, it already had a trust fund law in place for a century or more that helped prevent and that helped protect such organizations in Germany. So yeah, it differs based on location.
Fantastic. Well, Yilmaz, thank you so much for your contribution and for your presentation. I'm sure we'll all look forward to watching the films in full. Lauren, I'd like to hand over to you and give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and take over.
Thanks, Nick. Morning, everyone. My name's Lauren Fridlington, and I should point out my job title is Lead Innovator. I've not taken my manager's job, who's Head Innovator at Citizen. So if you ever see this, don't worry, your job's still safe. So today, I'm going to talk about sort of my journey and career in social innovation and what I've learned so far. So I'm just going to pop some slides on. And then hopefully you can see them and I can still see you guys and it's all right. I'm just going to, sorry, I'm working on two screens, which is unusual. I worked on a laptop for like a year and now I've got two screens. I'm like, where is everything? So I'm just going to go in presentation mode. Can you see that screen? I'm guessing you can. Yeah, perfect. So yeah, as I said, my name's Lauren Fridlington, Lead Innovator at Citizen, which is a social landlord social housing association in the West Midlands in the UK. Pretty big in terms of housing associations. We cover Birmingham, Coventry is our main area, Worcester and Hereford, if people know that space. That's where we are. And today I'm going to talk about lessons from my relatively short career in innovation, because it's been a rocky road and I've learned a lot. I think it's quite valuable to talk about it, actually, and I'm grateful that Nick asked me to. So before I go into that, just to put a bit of context on where these lessons are coming from, I thought I'd talk a little bit about where my passion came from and my career today, so you kind of get the point of view that I'm sharing this with you today. So first of all, I would like to put a question to you all listening, you all out there. Why social innovation? If you could type in the chat channel in Teams, why are you interested in social innovation? What does it mean to you? Why are you passionate about it? And I'm just going to pause for 30 seconds while I see some of these answers. I feel like teams need to get some like elevator music or something you can play in these moments. So it's not just like awkward silence. Transforming society, nice. A big aim, but a good aim. Positive change, yeah, I like that. Into something better, that's a good point. Transforming society into something better. I'll pause for 10 more seconds, see if we get any more coming through. Address structural inequalities, that's a really good one too. Thanks, Nick. So thank you, everyone. That's really helpful. I think it kind of lends quite nicely to why I'm interested in social innovation as well. If you've got any more, keep popping them in and I'll talk about them as we go through. Oh, can I still do this? There we go. Are we working presentation? There we go. So why social innovation for me? 3 things I'm super passionate about and get me out of bed in the morning is I just love being able to and see real impact for real people. Often with social innovation, as we heard about just before, it's in communities, it's with people, it's having an impact in a space. It's not always about thousands and hundreds and huge populations. Often it starts with small communities and real people, and I just think that's so important and it gets me excited. I just love being able to say, you know, we've made a difference to that person or that community. I really enjoy getting involved and making change happen. Throughout my career, I've worked in sort of small teams, either myself or just 2 of us, kind of leading on the innovation side. And that means that you kind of do all of it. You speak to the people, you come up with ideas, you get insights, and then you do the doing and see the change. And I really value that, particularly with social innovation. When I talked to my manager, Ben, he came from sort of corporate innovation, huge teams, big change for everyone across the world. So he worked with sort of big brands and really forward-thinking kind of technical stuff. And that's so exciting. But for me, getting involved and seeing that change in the community, love it. And then finally, building relationships and making connections. I just love, I'm a people person. We'll hear in a minute that my first degree was in psychology. And I just love knowing about people, understanding kind of how we behave, how we think, how we interact with each other, and then how we make that as part of our way of life and the way of living, and being part of that, making those relationships, learning about people, their challenges. Again, something that I'm super passionate about, and I'm really grateful I get to do that in most of my daily life as a in an innovation role. So, career to date, what I've done, all started at Northumbria with Nick and a little bit of Justine. So, as I said before, my first degree was in psychology, and then I did Multi-Disciplinary Innovation, which is a course that Nick runs at Northumbria, and then continued that being an innovator in residence, which really kind of sparked my interest for innovation. I didn't really know about this kind of career before, and got that opportunity, and this is kind of when I realised that sort of the more social side of innovation is what I was really excited about. We had loads of opportunities on all these kind of really exciting projects, big names like Unilever and people like that. But for me, it was kind of like working with schools, working with mental health charities, working with older people in communities that kind of started that journey. I then moved on to Whitton Lodge, which is a tiny housing association in North Birmingham, one of the most deprived areas in the UK. And it was a community projects development officer, where I was asked to look at what projects can we do in this community to be more than just a house, bricks and mortar. What else can we do to bring these people together, give them more opportunities in terms of employment, learning, well-being, just being part of something. I then went to Prince's Trust, which is a young person's charity that covers the whole of the UK. And there I was part of an innovation team, looking at how we can drive innovation internally to impact young people and create better opportunities for them. And then now I'm at Citizen, where I'm lead innovator, and we're looking at how can we improve the lives of our customers, of our tenants in the West Midlands. What more can we do, and how can we improve what we already offer as a housing association? So I've got another question for you all. The final 3 jobs that I've had, the last 3, that's not the right word, they've all got something in common, and this is kind of why I think I've got something interesting to share about my career in social innovation. Can you guess what it is? Pop it in the chat. The prize of pride is open to anybody who gets it right. That's the only prize I can offer. If we're in the room, I'd probably have some chocolate or something, but unfortunately we're not. Any ideas? What do Whitton Lodge, the Prince's Trust, and Citizen have in common? If you've got an idea, pop it in the chat, and then I will let you know. I'm sure you're all so excited to know. Yeah, that is a reason, but it's not the one I'm looking for. Social enterprises, people, communities. Again, a good guess. I guess it's quite relevant to me, I suppose, I would say, as a clue. Any more guesses? I'm going to go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I feel like Justine's typing. I'm like, come on. No, but good guess. Could use my psychology background. The answer is, in this context, all good guesses and all true, I think, is in-house innovation didn't exist before I started. So none of these places had an innovation team or kind of had innovation before I got there. They'd done a bit of consultancy work where they'd come in and supported on a project. But me and my colleagues, normally me and one other person, we were kind of the start of the innovation journey for these different places to work. And for that reason, it's been really interesting and a huge learning curve. So I'd gone from Northumbria, where working with Nick gets innovation, knows it, real enablers, to organisations where they're interested, can see the value, but never done it before. And then there I was, like, hey, let's do some innovation. So the lessons that I've learned are as follows. Oh, sorry, I keep clicking between the screens, not working. There we go. So the lessons I want to talk about is how I've seen sort of making social innovation happen and embedding that into different workplaces. What have I learned? What have I seen? The first one, and so important, is creating that space and energy for innovation to happen. It's huge. It's so important. And when this doesn't happen, innovation really struggles. So from my experience, in my opinion, for social innovation to succeed, it really needs that space to breathe. It needs people and it needs commitment. Without that, what we've seen happen is innovation gets deprioritised. As you can imagine, innovation is a bit of a luxury, a bit of an add-on. And in these organisations that I've worked in, innovation is happening. Everybody else is doing their 9 to 5, and then they're also getting asked to be involved in innovation. So a real challenge is, how do you get people to be excited, be involved, be focused on innovation projects when they've got their 9 to 5? And their 9 to 5 is so important. Thinking about the organisations that I've been working for, working with young people that are struggling, that are vulnerable, that need support, need help to kind of move forward their life. In housing, someone might have a leak, they might need some support in finding a house, they might be homeless, and then we're also asking these people to think about an innovation project. So as you can imagine, we get bumped to the bottom of the list. It needs people are the knowledge. The innovation team, we can facilitate, we can lead, we can make things happen, but without that multidisciplinary team, there's no knowledge, there's no expertise. We need those people to be there with us and supporting us. And it's so important that innovation happens with the people that are doing the stuff, that know the stuff, that are living and breathing it. And then without the commitment, without the resource, it's slow. As you can imagine, innovation, things happen quickly, things move on. If projects take time to move, whatever you think is valuable and important to that community at that point in time, months pass, people have moved on, the world's moved on. So it's really important that that space, energy and time is there. 2 ways that this has happened, different in the Prince's Trust and different at Citizen. I'll talk about 2 different approaches that we've used and I've seen. The Prince's Trust, how they approached innovation was they created an innovation fund with an innovation team and innovation champions. So they basically made a pot of money that anybody within the Prince's Trust could pitch for anything that they felt was going to have an impact for the people that they were saying it was going to have an impact for. It could be young people, it could be an internal innovation, something that they wanted to do for people within the Prince's Trust. And it kind of met whatever the strategy was or the goals were for the Prince's Trust. So it had to have a positive impact, and it also had to meet the basic strategy purpose of the Prince's Trust. And we also created innovation champions. As I talked about earlier, there was me and my manager and 2 volunteers at the Prince's Trust, tiny innovation team for 1,000 staff. 4 people to cater for 1,000 different projects potentially. So what we did is we built a group of innovation champions who are kind of our people on the ground. So we upskilled these colleagues, people that had normal 9-to-5 jobs. They weren't part of the innovation team. We upskilled them. We kind of talked to them about what innovation means and how to set up projects, how to mentor others. And the intention was that the innovation team, including the champions, could support any projects that were happening. So what people could do was they could either pitch for money for stuff. So if they had an idea, they kind of had evidence it was going to have an impact, but they just needed some stuff. So for example, we had projects like where colleagues there wanted to create sort of like chill out spaces for young people, often coming into doing sessions with us. It could be quite stressful, frustrating. They might need some space to chill out. So they created sort of like chill out rooms where it had like incense and music and different lighting. So they just needed stuff to try it out and see whether it made a difference. What other people did was they pitched for money for time. So one of the biggest projects there, they pitched for money for 6 months secondment to do that project. So they created a team around their idea, because it was quite a large idea. It was about how do we innovate the way that young people apply for jobs and completely revolutionise how CVs are seen. And it's based on people assets and what people are like rather than the skills on their CV. So a lot of the young people that were coming into the Prince's Trust, as you can imagine, had little to no educational certificates or background, dropped out of school a lot of the time, hadn't worked before, but really wanted to. But because they didn't have that on their CV, they just were instantly discounted. So it's like, how do we flip that around so that people see the value of someone rather than what they've done? So that's quite a chunky project. And they pitched into the Innovation Fund to create a team and to kind of move out of their role 6 months. So that's how that worked there. And it's kind of, it worked well most of the time. But as you can imagine, kind of all these projects happening with a really tiny innovation team, it's difficult to manage, it's difficult to support everybody. But the beauty of it was in the power of the people. They could apply for money and get innovation moving all across the Prince's Trust rather than it just being sat with the innovation team. So that's how it works at the Prince's Trust. At Citizen, what we're trying to do is, we're just piloting this now at the moment, and I'm really excited about it actually, is what we're doing is we're trying this idea of sort of internal recruitment, where when we've got a project or an opportunity, we're going to advertise it out and say, come and join us in innovation, be part of this project, and it will be sort of part of their work rather than being their 9-to-5. We're not sure yet whether it's going to be 100% of their time for sort of X amount of weeks or months. If it's going to be 50%, so it's like 50% is for innovation and 50% is for their normal job or 1 day a week. We're not sure how we're going to do that yet, but we're really excited that we can sort of showcase innovation a bit more. People are always so willing to get involved, but then when it comes to it, as I talked about earlier, other things kind of come in the way. So we might have sort of half their attention. So it's like, how do we create people space? How can they feel allowed? A lot of the time we hear, oh, I'm not sure I'm allowed to get involved. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to be part of it because I need to do my job. So it's like, how do we make people feel empowered, excited, and that they're also going to get something out of this project as well as doing something that they're passionate about? So that's what we're going to do at Citizen, and we're hoping to start that in the next month or so. So I'm really excited to see how that works in practice. Often that's how it's been done elsewhere. A lot of colleagues that I speak to that I know from kind of charity worlds, this is how they run their innovation teams, where people bolt into the innovation team and then go back out. So we'll see. I'll report back. I'll let you know how it goes. I'm really hopeful it's going to be great. The second lesson, keeping it simple, super important. When you kind of talk to people about innovation, it feels like it's in this cloud of mystery and weird, wonderful, crazy, energetic people, when really it's not. It's about problem solving and understanding problems and creating solutions. So keeping it simple, I've found, is the best way to engage people. So again, 3 things. Social innovation to succeed, what I've seen work really well is making it easy to engage with, keeping the process simple, and being led by experts. I put a question mark on because I couldn't think of a better word, but what I'm trying to express is where I've seen innovation work best is when people are leading it that have done it and get it and know it. This might be someone like me who's an innovation team member. It might be someone who's gone and had a bit of training or been upskilled. But where it works best is where people understand kind of how innovation is different to just normal life, normal problem solving. Found that language is really important. The more easy to access it is, the less jargon, the less crazy words that are used. People get it. Often innovation, and what I've seen with it's the same stuff used in different ways, kind of making up words for things, but actually it doesn't need it. It just needs simple language that people get. Complexity is a barrier. If you're looking into innovation, you'll see that there are so many frameworks, there are so many ways of doing it, and it just kind of frightens people a little bit. So it's like, how do you keep that simple so that those people that are kind of bolting into the innovation project can get it in an instant and then move away? Not everybody needs to be an expert, they just need to come on the journey with you. And then taking a step back, and I think this is why I think having people that are sort of innovation minded, if that's a way of phrasing it, is really important, because what you see is when there's a problem, people that are working in that space just want to solve the problem quickly. They want to get moving. Whereas when you kind of take an innovation mindset, it's kind of taking a step back, and there may be a problem. So for example, a project that I'm working on at the moment is to do with our our online platform for our tenants, where you can log on to my account. It's called Pay Rent, report repairs, things like that, and we've just not seen the usage on there that we would expect. The question is why. A really quick answer might be, well, it's not quick enough, it's not good enough, it doesn't look nice enough, and the people that are in it just want to make those improvements, so it's the best platform it could possibly be. But what we've done is kind of taken a step back and said, let's speak to people and see what's going on. And what we found is actually one of the main barriers is data poverty. People just can't afford data to get on the internet, or they don't have internet at home. Wi-Fi is not a priority to them. And without speaking to people and kind of doing that process, you wouldn't have heard those insights and got that kind of rich information. So taking that step back and kind of having those people in an innovation role or an innovation mindset say, hang on a minute, let's talk to people, actually find out what's going on. I think that's really important. Again, what we're doing at Citizen, I'm going to say Princess Trust, I'm not there anymore. At Citizen, we're using an innovation radar, and this is kind of our basic framework for innovation. It kind of shows what we expect to happen when something comes in. So, for example, with the projects I just talked about, we're in the explore phase. Explore is all about research, learning, gathering information, being as expansive as possible and trying to figure out what's going on. Scope is where you would find that learning. So once you've learned stuff, you kind of narrow down a little bit and say, okay, based on what we've learned, what have we heard? What do we think's going on? Then we move into proof of concept, which we're narrowing it down again. Be like, okay, what things can we start testing? We've got a few hypotheses. These are the kind of things that we think's going on, but how can we test some of these assumptions with real customers? We then move into trial. So based on what we've learned in those tests, what are we going to kind of do as a more robust test and sort of collect data, larger scale, see what works? And then the final bit, where we're right at the end of that radar, where it kind of goes the most narrow, is scale. So we would move forward with kind of our lead idea or what we think is going to work and test that either with a full customer base or with a large group and say, okay, let's see if this actually works in practice. We think it's going to. We've done all these tests. And this is just a way of us showing that you kind of start big and then you go narrow and you keep moving through those phases. We've got the customer impact kind of arc on there. And we say that kind of innovation heartland, so to speak, for us anyway at Citizen, is in that high to medium area. Our role is to really focus on customers and how we can improve our services and their life. So anything that's kind of low to medium would be sort of projects that we might get involved with if we've got time, but we really want to focus on those high impact projects, medium impact projects. So this is a framework you might say to me, that is not simple, that is not easy, that's complicated. But this is how we're talking about innovation at Citizen, just to kind of show the typical things that we would do and how we would move through a project. We also talk about like the mindset, and are we in a diverge, converge mindset? So Diverge is about being expansive, it's about learning, it's not about solutions, it's not about coming up with kind of, this is what we're going to do. It's all about learning and gathering. And it's just a way of reminding people that when we're in each of those stages, we're going to go through a period of being divergent and learning and gathering information. And then we'll move through to being more convergent and focused, where that's when we start to kind of come up with theories, come up with ideas, start to think about testing. So it's kind of being able to sort of flip back and say, okay, that's great, but we're in this mindset right now. And what we found is those two things don't happen at the same time. It's quite difficult if someone's trying to be really expansive and be like, yes, ideas, and then someone's like, well, no, that wouldn't work because of this, that wouldn't work because of this. So it's trying to remind people that there's different mindsets for different parts, and just kind of being clear about what you're doing and what time and what kind of mindset you need people to be in when you're working through those phases and bits of work. Okay, number three, and probably the most important, is real people must be at the heart of absolutely everything you do. We engage with customers, real people, from explore all the way through to scale. We take them with us on that full journey, and it's so important that their stories are right there with you the whole way through. For success, it needs the stories of real people. It's got to be built on real insight, and quality is so important as well as the quantity. Often what we see is that there's so much data. There is so much data in these types of organisations. Where I'm at now at Citizen, we've got 30,000 properties. There's so much data on so many people. But we don't know the quality insights. We don't know about those people. We kind of just know how old they are, what's their gender, what's their ethnicity, all that kind of information, which is so valuable. But it's the quality of information, the real insights that kind of give you those nuggets for social innovation. So, I've said on the right-hand side, without real people, social innovation doesn't exist. I think it's so easy to kind of, when there's a problem happening, or you can see something that's not quite working, or you've spotted an opportunity, you go with your first assumption, you make something happen, and you go with it. And I think it's a challenge to kind of say to people, that's a really good idea, and yes, we should do that, but let's speak to some people first. As humans, it's natural. When we see a problem or opportunity, we just want to go, we just want to make change, we want to make things happen. But without those insights, without those stories, without those real people being involved who you're actually trying to impact, whatever idea you had might be brilliant, but if it's not relevant to that person, then it's not going to be a fantastic piece of innovation. So we stress this so much, that we need to speak to people before, we need to get people involved, we need to do workshops with them, we need to learn about their life before we can then say, this is how we're going to move forward. So for example, the My Account project, which is really relevant, I presented this back yesterday. We haven't got any content like this in Citizen at the moment. This is kind of the first time, other than when we've worked with consultancies, that we're creating these kind of stories. So what we did was, with My Account, as I mentioned earlier, the question was, why are we not getting the uptake that we'd expect to see, particularly with our younger cohort, which is 16 to 35? These people aren't engaging with the way that they thought we would with an online platform. Early assumptions were, don't like it, it's not quick enough, they're not engaging with us at all. So what we did is like, okay, great assumptions, they're brilliant, let's put them to one side and let's build on those and go speak to some customers. What we would have loved to have done is spend some time with customers in their homes, or brought them in, do a workshop. Unfortunately, because of COVID, this has all been on the phone. So it's maybe not as rich, or I guess we haven't been able to build the relationships as strongly as what we'd hoped for, but we've still got some brilliant insights. And what we learned was there's kind of 4 different things going on. Some people don't want to use My Account online platforms at all because they just don't feel confident, they're not interested, they don't think they can explain themselves through text, and that's, I won't use My Account and you'll never convince me. They're a kind of group that we're probably never going to engage, and that's okay. The group down the bottom, I don't use My Account, but I could if I wanted to. So they are using online platforms, but they're not using ours. And it's because our phone lines are so good. I think, our phone service, you ring and then within 30 seconds someone picks up or something like that, which is amazing. Why would you bother going online? It's really difficult to get your password and login details. I think every 3 months it gets refreshed. Customers don't remember them. It's difficult to get a new one. Why would they waste time doing that when in 30 seconds they can be on the phone? And other things such as data poverty that we talked about earlier. People don't always prioritise Wi-Fi when they're first moving in. They have limited data on their phones, a real pay-as-you-go culture. So people are paying for data rather than having a monthly contract. And to be quite frank, why would they look on Citizen's website when they might want to speak to their friends on WhatsApp or check Facebook and things like that? And there's also accessibility issues, which are sort of the ones on the right-hand side where there's language barriers going on, where a lot of our customers' English isn't their first language. Everything's in English on there. Some of our customers aren't able to read and write. Some of our customers have dyslexia, so going online is really difficult, and phone calls better. And then the one at the bottom is about customers who can use online, but they're not technically confident. They feel like they need sort of a bit of support, a bit of advice, a bit of guidance how to use it, but they could if they had help. So without speaking to those people, we would never know any of this information. So I guess kind of what I've seen is people want to do innovation, they want to do it quickly, and they want to get moving and want to see good things happen, but you've got to take time to speak to these people. We only spoke to 30 customers. It took us about a month to get 30 people on. It was just me on the phones. I think I rang nearly 200 people and only 30 people said yes. So it takes time, but it is so worth it, and it gives you so much more value. And then the last one, and the most difficult one, is building trust. As I said right at the start, my journey in these organisations was the start of innovation at these organisations. So it needs a bit of a leap of faith. It needs people to be exposed to this way of working, and it needs a bit of resilience, because there's so many times that people are like, no, you can't do that. No, I'm not helping you out. It's difficult sometimes. You're pushing people out of their comfort zones. Working in this way isn't normal for a lot of people, and I think I have to keep remembering that I'm so fortunate that I fell onto the MDI course with Nick, because it has opened my eyes to kind of a different way of working and a different way of problem solving. And people aren't used to that. Like I talked about, it's kind of, you want to focus on your work, you want to do a good job, but we're asking them to do something else and work a bit differently and spend more time problem solving and working in ways that maybe aren't natural to everybody. It's not the norm. I think the more exposure you can give, the better. The more you can bring people along with you on that journey, get them involved in the customer insights, get them involved in the workshops, show them the value of working in this way. It's brilliant. The amount of workshops that we've had where lights just kind of switched on in people's brains said, I get it now, I get it. It's brilliant. And often, the innovation teams are the trailblazers, are the people that are trying to make change and trying to do something different and trying to push those boundaries. So having resilience is so important. The amount of times that I've been told, no, we can't do it like that, we can't do it like that. And I'm like, no, we're going to stick with it, and you're going to see why it's good, I promise. And then at the end, they're like, oh yeah, I'm glad you told me that. It's hard. Some days I'm just like, please just let me do my job. It's difficult, but it's so worth it. And I guess in terms of the how, my only advice is just to do it, to live it, to breathe it, just to keep pushing through. And I think these are some projects that we've been up to. On the left is one of our kind of most high profile innovation projects at Citizen. It's called Fresh Start. And what happened was, we thought, before me and Ben got there, a consultancy called What If, which is a innovation consultancy based in London, I think, in the UK. They came and they spent a month with us, or 2 months, I think, over the summer. And half of what they did was that upskilling piece, exposing people to innovation, that way of working, so valuable. So we've now got allies in Citizen that know what we're talking about. And they also did a big customer research piece. And one of the big things they found was our kind of slogan at Citizen is homes are a foundation for life. And we were putting people in homes where, as you can see in the top 2 pictures on the left, wallpaper's falling off the wall, cupboards weren't right, not nice. So we were kind of putting people in properties where they had to spend money, they had to spend time, they had to source furniture. If they didn't already have it or have access to money, they would just live in this kind of rundown property. These are some of the nicer images that you're seeing, and it's kind of, you know, improving that void standard to fresh start, which is what it's called at the bottom two, where we're trialing two different things at the moment, where we're looking at what impact does it have if we put flooring down and decorate the full property versus if we put flooring down and provide white goods. So we're trying to understand what well-being impact does that have, what financial impact does that have, how does that impact their tenancy. We're focusing on the most hard-to-let properties that are generally, where I work, one beds and bed sits. People often don't want to live in those types of properties, they want a home. But often it's kind of single people where they are the most relevant property for them to live in. So we're looking at how does that impact their life and the way that they live in that property. So that's fresh start. And I think because people have been involved in that process and they can see the impact that it's having on their customers, they get it, they want to be part of it, and people are really behind that project. Other things that we've been doing is the My Account stuff that I talked about, and it's kind of bringing people on that journey, showing different ways of sharing content, talking to customers, sharing what they're saying, and then doing workshops. We're using Mural at the moment because we can't do stuff in person. Mural's like an online whiteboard type platform. Miro's really similar, you might have heard of that one. And it's just exposing people to that kind of way of thinking. So we often use things like wouldn't it be great if, or what if stuff. So it's kind of getting people to think, yes, there's a now, but wouldn't it be great if we do this? And it's just getting people to kind of more use that mindset of being a bit more expansive, looking past what's going on now, and just bringing them through and exposing them to what we're up to. So I think it's really difficult to build trust. The only way of doing it is just kind of being true to what you believe in and going with it and showing people the value of innovation and that way of working. So they're the lessons that I've learned in my relatively short career. Creating space and energy, getting people to feel empowered and part of something, and they have the time to get involved and focus on it. Keeping it simple. Not everybody needs to be an expert. They just need to be able to engage and get it and get involved. Keeping real people at the heart of everything that you do. Without those people, social innovation that exists, it's not going to be as impactful as what it can be. And building trust, getting people to believe in you, in your way of working, and taking them on that journey so they can see the value. It's difficult, but it's really, really valuable. And that's everything. I feel like I've talked maybe for longer than half an hour, but thank you so much for listening. I saw a few things pop up. I'm more than happy to take some questions. Let me just stop sharing my screen. That is the end of my presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lauren. It may be a short career, but clearly it's already been a valuable one. And, you know, it's been great to have two practitioners come and speak at this seminar. So I'm very grateful for that. Peter's posted the first question, or put his hand up first. So Peter.
Thanks again, Nick. Thank you so much, Lauren. I could really see your passion and hear the passion in your voice. So that's amazing. And I was wondering, because you talked about, okay, when will innovation succeed? When will it be successful? And to me, it looked kind of a bit like a blend between goal-orientated social innovation, but also process-orientated innovation. So I was wondering, what is a successful innovation project for you? To you, I mean, when is it successful? Is it also if you involve people and nothing comes out of it? Or do you have clear goals at the beginning and try to work towards them? So, yeah, what's your view on that?
Good question. I guess what is a successful innovation project to me? I think, above all, I think it's making a difference to people. Where you can see that there's challenge or, you know, things that are going on for people that aren't allowing them to live their best life or be as happy as they could or feel comfortable in the community or space they live in, when you know that you've made that change, I think for me, above everything else, that is kind of a measure of success, because as I talked about right at the start, that's probably one of my most important values in what I'm trying to do, make a difference to people. So I think that is really important, and kind of making sure that the change that you're trying to make is a change that's a positive one and what's needed, because I think it's so easy to kind of take things to face value and try and impact that when actually something much more deeper is going on. You kind of remember the you know, the image of the iceberg where you can see the bit at the top and then underneath it. So I think it's kind of digging into that and understanding what's going on underneath the surface and making a change there. That for me would feel like success. But I think another part of it is, you know, kind of, and it's interesting you said this, I never really thought about it before, but I think something that I really enjoy and think is a huge bonus to the work that we do is kind of getting people excited about this way of working, because you know, there's loads of different frameworks. There's like the double diamonds, radar, there's kind of loopy doopy things, there's all sorts of stuff going on. And I think it's just a bit more kind of saying to people, before we do that, let's think about it, let's learn, let's use these different tools and techniques, which there's hundreds of, that's so simple, but it kind of puts your kind of mindset in a different space. And I think seeing that kind of light click on of like, I get it, I'm excited about it, and I'm going to take this into my own team or my own way of working, that would, you know, I think that's a really successful part of being an innovation team. Sometimes projects won't always go ahead. You might do a bit of research and that's enough, but kind of working in that different way and bringing people on that journey, I think that's a really kind of positive.
I'm also asking this because I can imagine that citizen would say, hey, we need tangible outcomes, or hey, what did you do in the last 20 years? What did you do in the past 20 months or so? What are the innovation projects? And that's always the struggle I have, because I totally feel I see that as well. If people change, if they have a positive mental attitude or whatever, I think that's also socially innovative. But I can also imagine that from a company perspective, they say, hey, what did you do? Okay, you renovated a house, great, people are feeling better. So, but yeah, that's why I'm asking this. But I can see the ambivalent happening in here.
The kind of value, the social value of innovation, it's an interesting one. We're actually trying to kind of, how do we articulate the stuff that's not obvious? So, you know, with Fresh Start, you can see an improvement, you can see furnishings changing, but the impact on real people, how do we show that as an outcome, both in terms of our customers, I've just described, in terms of how staff have, you know, evolved and had an impact through being involved in that process. It's really difficult, but it's a huge part of it, and it's something that we're battling with. But I think, you know, it's something that's, it's hard to sort of prove, but it's there. So I totally take your point on that one. Thank you for your question.
Jorios said thank you for your presentation and asked, how can I participate? Are there ways that people outside of Citizen can contribute to the type of work that you're involved with?
Good question. So yes, I guess there is. Part of that is we're currently looking at something called Citizen to Citizen, which is sort of a multifaceted project thing. One of it is about kind of innovation in the local communities and people doing stuff within that community. So it's not necessarily us in Citizen that's kind of generating that. It's kind of the bottom-up stuff that we heard about in the first presentation, where people in communities can see there's a need for change, and how do we bring a group around them, support them from within Citizen and from within the communities. So there's that as an option. In terms of the actual project, we're always open to kind of bring in external people in support. So again, kind of as I talked about with the people being knowledge, we're sort of open to that being customers, real people, internal people from Citizen, and also external people. So if it's something you want to get involved with, let me know and see what we can do. But that's a general reply.
Fantastic, thank you. Brogan, you've posted a question. Do you want to speak it out?
Yeah, I was just wondering, have you experienced any heavy resistance internally when people just don't see the value or don't get what you guys are doing? Or are people generally quite excited about this sort of work being done in their workplace?
I guess I would refer back to my resilient point. It's been a difficult journey. It's been difficult, and different things have happened in different places. And I think, you know, it's not something which is, what's the right way of saying this? I guess we're always an extra. Innovation is always an extra in my world, where people are doing what they need to do to achieve their targets, to do the best by our customers or young people at Prince's Trust. And we're then putting an extra load on that group of people by saying, we can see an opportunity for change, come and help us, but you've also got to do your normal job. That is where that space and energy bit is honestly so important, because that's where the most resistance comes, where people just either they don't want the change because they can't see past what they're currently doing, like we've always done it this way, it's working, go away kind of attitude. And you know, they're the experts in their area, that it's a valid opinion, but we obviously can see there's a reason that we're there's a reason that we're trying to create a change. So that definitely happens a lot, where there's a huge resistance to any kind of change, innovation or otherwise. There's kind of the resistance in terms of, I just don't have time, like, please go away, I just do not have time to engage with this, my brain, my time, my energy is all on what I need to do. And then we're saying, we want to do all these workshops, we need 3 hours of your time for a month, and they're like, no, just go away, no. So there's that. And they're two really difficult things to overcome, because if people don't get it, don't want it, and if people don't have the time, how does innovation even happen? Because ultimately, we're kind of like the fire starters, we're the facilitators, we get change moving, but for that change to be sustained and to happen, those people have got to do it. So we can come along and be like, yay, fresh start's amazing, let's do this. With the people on the ground that are doing the void works, that are letting out the properties, that are talking to customers, if they don't believe in it or want to do that work, as soon as we come out, it's just going to go back to normal. It's like, you've got to get that buy-in. But with Fresh Start, I have to say, everybody loves it, which is a great thing for us. So it's kind of having that challenge of, if you're going to make change, it's kind of building that trust, bringing people along with you, and kind of trying to, I don't know, gently force it, if that's even a way. So there is that there often, but there's also people that kind of are naturally kind of problem solvers, naturally kind of quite creative, naturally want to make change. And often, particularly in the trust, what we tried to do was like spot those people. It's difficult at Citizen because my whole career at Citizen has been on a screen. I've gone into work, I think, 4 times in the last 12 months. So I haven't been around people to kind of, you know, when you're talking to people or chatting to them about stuff, you can tell who the natural kind of maybe innovators are, or problem solvers, or creative thinkers. And it's like, how do you get those allies to kind of be part of what you're trying to do, to be the trailblazers? Can't speak. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking. He's just started growling. To be all those people who can kind of show the value. So yes, there is always challenge and there is always resistance to change, but there's also people that do get it straight away and do want to be part of it. And it's kind of getting those people around you, getting those people on the ground and in the different teams, and that's when it kind of starts to get moving. So yeah, in answer to your question, there's a bit of both, and it's quite difficult. Sorry if you can hear the dog.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Well, let me just start to draw this session to a close. Thank you, Lauren and Yilmaz, for your contributions. Really, really great content and fascinating, and very good interaction with your questions and getting us to try to answer them. I just an announcement on next month's seminar. It's a slightly different time to normal. So it takes place on May the 21st, and it's running at 3 in the afternoon UK time. That's 4 in the afternoon European summertime. And the speakers are Dr. Molly Briggs and Lisa Mercer from the School of Art and Design, University of Illinois. They're going to be talking about their MFA in Design for Responsible Innovation. So because they're stateside, we've shifted it to afternoon in Europe. So I hope you can still join us May 21st. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. Thank you, everybody. See you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.